Welcome to the UpLevel Podcast, Jessa. Thank you for being here with us.
I wish Guneha for having me.
You've been navigating really challenging and incredible times living in the Los Angeles area and supporting your community and the families. And I wanted you to be with us, and the listeners have heard this already because of the great work you're doing around being in right relationship with all our relations, which I want you to talk about what that means. So if we can just start right there. What does it mean to be in right relationship from your perspective? And what do you mean by all our relations?
Okay. I want to start by saying we cannot be in right relationship if we're not in right relationship with ourselves. So it does begin with ourselves, with being in alignment with ourselves, with our energy field, and checking in with ourselves frequently. I think a really big way to feel if you're on that right path is to ask yourself every night, are my ancestors proud of the way that I handled this day? Would they be proud of me? And kind of feel that through and decide for yourself what the answer is and should there be any changes to be your better self. And when you can start showing up for yourself, creating boundaries and things that are not just to protect you, but others around you, and you feel your best self, that's when we can show up for our loved ones, for our communities, and begin to create right relationships with others. And when speaking to, all my relations, I can't speak on behalf of everybody else for this. You'll hear me say that a lot. But from my understanding, when I think of all my relations, what I tune into is the knowing of oneness, of the fact that I am made of energy. And that as I look at you at this moment, as I feel you at this moment, I understand that you are made of energy. And through this understanding, I recognize that our energies are related in that way, And so when I think of all my relations, that's what I think of, is that we are all related through this energy force, through this energy field. So that is what I would say all my relations means to me personally.
Thank you for that. And we're exploring this a lot this season. And if you'd be willing to share from your lineage and the Indigenous way of living, how being in right relationship with all of our relationships was an important part of your family and your lineage.
I would like to state that in my opinion, in my belief, in my teachings, that it goes back to the relationships that we had with our non-human relatives. They were our first teachers. The what we know as animals today, we in our stories, we know them as people. For instance, the deer people, the coyote people, when we would share stories, when stories are shared with us of these peoples, that's how we relate to them. Today, people know them as animals, but they are our first teachers. They taught us, how and when to migrate or move through the land, and how and where to eat the proper foods. And, there's just so many teachings that they had to offer us. So it always, for me, starts there. And so when we think of, how we transitioned into today, I feel it's crucial for us to always consider these relatives in everything that we say and do, because I feel that as society has pushed themselves onto our lands, they have excluded that natural world. And it's interesting because with my understandings and teachings, we are, as human beings, we are a part of the natural world. So the devastation of pulling us away from the idea of being a part of the natural world, I think is a means of controlling and causing illness mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And that is what's causing us to step away from respecting ourselves and seeing ourselves as sacred, causing us to step away from the respect of water and lands, of our plant relatives and animal relatives, and seeing them as sacred, as well as the way that we treat and respect each other and seeing each other as, sacred, and having that respect and reciprocity. Instead of I think we're in a culture today of take, me, every man for themselves. But traditionally, it was all about reciprocity, and reciprocity is a big stake in what relationship building inquires. And so I think it's really important in understanding that in order to be our best selves and in order to show up for others, we have to get back to that understanding, to have that reciprocity, and to just treat everybody as if they are sacred and beautiful and deserving of love. And again, that starts with us. I can't see the sacred in you if I don't see the sacred in me.
It's so, so beautifully said. It's like the medicine that is needed so badly right now is that remembrance of those teachings. And when I'm thinking about what you're saying, I know I have been so lost to the fact that like the flowers and the plants and the stones and all of these, like in the English language, they make them others. Like it's an it, or it's like an it, versus it's a being that has energy and has intelligence and is part of me, and I am part of it. So it's like the English language has had a way of stripping us from that knowledge. And I don't know, I always want to cry when I think about that, when I think about like what's been stolen, and gosh, this question, I don't know if this is going to seem kind of trite, but from your perspective, why has this happened in this way to humans and to the planet? Like, what is the bigger picture?
I don't know that I can share the bigger picture or even why. Again, back to my idea, I guess, my perspective is like, I know we use that word racism a lot. And at some point, I reflected with, I'm a massage therapist at times. And so I had a client that was sharing with me about the realities of Europe and her family, and how her family were not colonizer peoples, but they were colonized, and they received a lot of the horrific situations that were actually happening here. And her family, they were just farmers. They just wanted to live a simple life, but yet they, were receiving the worst of the worst. So as I started to reflect on the things that she was sharing and wanting to dig deeper into what was happening in Europe, right, the Dark Ages and so on, I recognized that it's not so much racism. That's the name that we give it now, but ultimately it's just hate. It's hate. And in hearing the stories of the Spanish people who came here when they were devastating our lands from, the 1600s, they often talked about the way that mothers were loving their children as if it was a strange thing to them. And so putting these things together, I'm like, oh my gosh, these people didn't know how to love themselves. They weren't loving each other. So you have a world of hate over there. And that was, European on European hate.
Yeah.
And they just brought that over here. And so there was so much more to it, right? You have like the one percenters, we'll call them, from all the way back then, where it's just so much greed, mine, take. And the fact that they're able to use law and fear to implement their laws, right?
Mm.
We had law here,
Mm.
and we didn't tell people that they were illegal to be here on these lands, but we had law that said, this area belongs to these families and this area belongs to these families. And so it was not in anybody's right to come over here and just take and murder and destruct the way that they did. But because they were able to use these made up laws on their end, they were able to harm and harm and harm. And it was always for more, more, more. They couldn't get enough. Their greed was so heavy, and their ideologies of what money is and how you can, use what we call relatives here, they call resource there, as a means to continue to gain this money. And so at the end of the day, it's just this matter of power and greed in their mindset of things, because what these invaders deem as important and as like rich, we don't see it that way over here. Rich over here means that there's lush plant, that there's lush animal population, that the water is healthy and healed. We understand that if our Mother Earth is sick, we as people will be sick, and vice versa. If our Mother Earth is healthy and well, then we prosper and we're healthy and well. So I definitely put it back to an ideology that came from another place in the world that was created amongst just ill-minded people.
And there was one of the first viruses. I mean, if we're going to talk about a pandemic, I mean, that was a virus that literally wiped out people and took away so much of the relations of the land and the nutrients on the land, the relatives on the land. And it's why we're exploring this in this context, in this moment in time, because it feels like we're at a crossroads and there's an opportunity to help people remember the Indigenous way of living, and that we've all been Indigenous at some point. I mean, and maybe, I don't know if you have that perspective, but like, this knowledge, I believe, is in us somewhere. There's a, wherever we really came from, there's a knowing what being in right relationship is. And then somewhere along the way, there was a disease and people got sick from it. And thank you for sharing through your context. It's also making me think about gift economy versus like the property economy, that when you talk about the invaders, that seemed to really come in. And there was this notion of the land is something you own and all of its relations, whereas your people saw it as this is a gift, and a gift is something that we give back to. So if you can speak about that and like the difference of the economies and the mindset and how it's being held and how it's been held in the past.
I do acknowledge that every area throughout the entire state of California is completely different. Through every family, right? The ideologies might be similar, but a little bit different. And so I will also acknowledge that there are areas throughout our family's lands that were designated, right? So like there are areas that people would know you don't cross those boundaries unless you're seeking help from like a medicine person who has a particular area, right? You'll often see these places as, for instance, NASA has taken ownership over one of these areas where our own people know that they weren't necessarily allowed to just go and be anytime they wish. But here's NASA going every morning, checking out every day when they leave work. And so it's just interesting that they can't respect our rules and boundaries, but they did exist, and also like areas where, say, like the Pinon Pines, people would say they'd say, this area here we know belongs to this particular family. And out of respect for that family, we leave it be. So those ideas were always there, but there was also the knowing that there was plentiful and we all had our designated areas. And so it's all about that respect and understanding. And it goes all the way around with that relationship and the importance of it. And so we were able to have families that surrounded us come over to our and share song and share gift and share love and share food, and it was so reciprocal all the way around and beautiful. And so for us, it was the knowing of how to take care of the land, how to take care of self, how to take care of each other that made it such a beautiful place. And it is true that fire did play a role in that. Fire played a role in so many different ways. It was in the circle. It's what kept us warm. It's what helped us in, times of ceremony. It's what helped us in ways of cooking our foods. And it's what helped us in ways of regrowth and also ensuring that the land is not filled with disease. So that fire keeps balance and everything. And I have this next to me because I'm always sitting here weaving.
Wow.
This is a basket that I made.
It's beautiful.
And I show that just to show that as basket weavers, we also count on good fire. We put good fire to our basket weaving materials to ensure brand new beautiful shoots. So if we're not tending to the land and having these relationships with the land, then you're going to have plants that are growing all crazy and wild, and you can't use them to create, beautiful, necessary gifts to offer, necessary materials to hold your food. And so all the way around, it is really about relationship and understanding how to work with one another.
How to work with one another and how to work with all of the elements and all of nature. And if you can say more about this traditional burn, which would help things to stay in equilibrium and to ensure that there was the right nutrients in the ecosystem and to ensure that I saw one of your videos, like where weevils got into a tree, but with the traditional burn, it was able to regenerate. Please educate us more on this.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. That's it. Is the ash is nutrient dense. And so when the ash goes back to the land, it allows for the soil to receive the nutrients that it needs. And fire, it balances out. So we don't want too much of any one plant in any one area. It's really important that we keep things trimmed and healthy. And so fire does help play the role in that. And like you did mention the weevils, is if there's too many weevils, that means that there's not a balance. It means that something is not healthy. And so what smoke from the fire does is smoke goes through the bushes, it goes through the trees, and it helps to keep the balance with the insects. Because no insects is a bad thing. Some insects is a good thing. Too much insects is a bad thing. So it's all about the balance. And so the smoke from the fire actually helps to bring that balance with the insects. And yeah, I mean, that's it right there. So all of that brings the balance to the land and the plants, which then helps bring a balance with the animals and the peoples.
It's right relationship right there. That if we can all try to see that visualization of there is a natural balance that needs to be held and restored, and your family, your peoples understood this, and there was so much reverence about that harmony, about that wholeness. So humanity has spent thousands of years just cannibalizing and capitalizing and colonizing and consuming.
Mm.
From your perspective, with what's happened in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, how are you speaking to that? What do you think's happened from your perspective?
I think we lost balance. Um, I know that a lot of this has to do with the fossil fuel industry, but I also know that it's more than just the fossil fuel industry. It is the land grabbing and the water grabbing that has happened here. The the entities that own water rights, they're taking too much water from places that they don't need to be taking it from. It's all for this power and control. The entities that are purchasing up lands and, land grabbing, they are creating homes in places where homes are not supposed to be. And when people come into these homes, they either decide to plant certain plants or those plants are already in place when they move in. And one thing that I can bring up is the cookie cutter era where everything had to be the same and everybody had grass. And so now a lot of people still have this idea that grass is beautiful and I got to have grass. And these types of plants are huge water guzzlers.
Mm.
So we have too many people using up too much water. And then we have invasive species that are starting to overtake our hills that are actually really big fuel for the fire.
Mm.
So it's just a huge imbalance that does stem from ultimately corporate America and colonization as a whole. And as long as we have the mindset of corporate America over people, then we're going to continue to have an imbalance that will continue to devastate. And so right now we see fire or we hear the word fire and we think of it as fear.
Mhm.
It's definitely fear-based. But the moment that we understand the relationship with the land and the relationship with fire and the relationship with water, and we can balance all of these things, is the moment that we understand that fire is to be loved, cherished, and respected. And it is a good thing.
Mm.
It can be a good thing.
Yes. Yes, Jessa. You're dropping it. Dropping it. I mean, what do we need to do to support humanity to reconnect to these ways of relating?
We need to slow down. Everybody is in a hurry to get rich and to be the next best, insert whatever here. But ultimately, it's about being our best selves, period.
Mhm.
And learning what community is, learning what community looks and feels like, understanding what self love is and what self love feels like, self respect, what that looks and feels like, and tuning that into the land and the waters and all the peoples around us. Once we can understand self love and self respect, and then we can mirror that out beyond us, it'll change the way that we see the world around us. Right now, everything is so fast paced, everything is me, me, me. And it's interesting because I have had many conversations as a massage therapist with people on my table who truly, truly believed that there was no such thing as community. And it broke my heart to hear people thinking and believing this, because here I am saying, I know community. I'm part of community. I understand community. And just to know that there are people in the world who don't understand what it is to love themselves and love their communities and show up for one another, it's devastating. And
Devastating.
that all stems from that fast momentum lifestyle. And so I do believe that when we slow down, we can start to understand what it is to just be
Mm.
and to appreciate, to have gratitude, and to begin to extend that love to one another, including the land.
I'm so with you. And that's the world I want to live in, you know?
And I do think, if I can add, It starts with our children.
Mm.
I do believe that our children are being indoctrinated from the beginning.
Mm.
As soon as they step into these public schools, and I myself have had my child in a homeschool program since I was teaching him on my own until he entered first grade. And then I put him into a program where we can oversee everything. And just to make sure that I'm instilling the morals that I feel are important for him.
Yeah.
And so watching my child grow up, I acknowledge that all of these things start with our babies, because if a child, I don't know if I should get into this, but as an example,
Yeah.
a child who is abused by their mother in horrific ways, we've watched them grow into serial killers.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so the same way, if a child is fed unconditional love as a child and taught how to put their hands on the soil and respect that land beneath their fingers,
Yes.
they grow up into being beautiful, loving people. And they are not going to be the people who own oil corporations, because they're going to know from the gate how disrespectful and wrong that is. So it definitely starts with teaching our children what unconditional love looks and feels like, how to honor and respect themselves, and allow them to grow into adult beings that can extend that to others around them and before them.
May we have more parents like you on the planet. May we. And what do you say to the folks that have been indoctrinated? I mean, I don't know if they're listening to this, but just there's some folks that are like, they're on that teeter-totter of, I'm going to just say, timelines. There's like a timeline that exists that it looks a certain way. This is how we show up. There's the rules, and this is how I be within that system. And then there's other timelines that have remembered what we've been speaking of. So if someone's like teeter-tottering, what do you say to them?
Everybody has choice. Period. I can't change anybody, and I know that. So it's not to say that like I'm going to waste my breath telling anybody anything, but I would just remind them that you have choice. You have the choice to be disruptful, disrespectful, and destructive, or you have the choice to love yourself. You have the choice to want to understand this lifestyle of slowing down and respecting the earth and respecting yourself and others. And I give that to you. What is your choice? And I often do, go back to that saying of asking yourself, are the ancestors of whose homelands that I'm currently standing on, are they happy with the way that I proceeded today? Are they happy with things that I'm doing today? Because here in what's now known as California or America, we know that these people walked a different walk than the people from the other side of the world, specifically naming Europeans, because there's beautiful indigenous ways all around the world. But if you are on the ancestral homelands of somebody else's lands and peoples, then ask yourself how they preferred life to be lived. How did they treat the land? And really walk into respecting their way of life. That's the best way to do it, because I promise you, when I go to your house to visit, I will observe and ask for your permission for things to ensure that I'm doing things the way that you see fit in your own household. I wouldn't go to your home and be like, oh, you're not supposed to have your couches over there. Let's move them to this side of the room, because, I can have the conversation with you of my thoughts and ideas of why a couch should be on this side of the room. But ultimately, however you see things fit in your household, I am going to walk in there and try to be mindful and respectful to that is your way of being. And if I can't see eye to eye to that, I probably won't go back to your house. But ultimately, that's your home.
I love this concept. Simple yet complex, like simple to ask oneself, with the ancestors of this land, be happy with the way I'm conducting myself and being in relationship. What about folks who have no concept of that, who truly do believe that it is their birthright to be on the land and to consume from the land? What's the message for them?
I don't know that I have a message directly to them. All I can do is right now, as you say this, tune into people with that mindset and just ask Creator to open their hearts, to open their minds, and allow them to begin to receive the information that they need to see things from a different perspective. I think a lot of people who are in that way, they're not in alignment with themselves. They're not in alignment with unconditional love. They're not in alignment with the beauty. And so all I can do at this point is just ask that they do become in alignment with this love, that they do begin to see the truth of what is around them,
Yeah.
and the truth that should be within them of deserving to be loved. Because ultimately, I believe that people who walk that walk don't love themselves. People who walk around being harmful to other people, they don't love themselves. And I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong. I'm just going to say that from my perspective, I would hope that they can begin to love themselves and then mirror that out into the world around them.
I'm tapping into those of us who are in this type of conversation, who are re-remembering, and then leaders like you who have been holding the wisdom and the knowledge and practicing it and getting it out there. It's part of our responsibility to pray
Yeah.
or meditate on parts of humanity that aren't yet tuning in to what you just said. That's one way we can contribute. Of course, there's people who are boots on the ground. They're marching, they're picketing, they're looking to create new laws. And I have so much respect for
Yeah.
that work. And then, I mean, that's not my work, but what I'm getting from our conversation is I can keep praying and meditating on humanity restoring to wholeness and remembering the truth.
And just leading by example, and I try to do that to the best of my ability, understanding that I'm a human being too.
Yeah.
I make mistakes.
Yeah.
As imperfect as I am, I would hope people accept me as I am. And so therefore we have to accept others as they are. And when we lead by example, what can happen then is people see the way that you're moving and the way that you do things and say, I want to be more like that. And then hopefully they will then start taking steps to become more like that. But at the end of the day, I do lean towards the belief that we all have free will and we all have choice. And so ultimately, it is not my responsibility to force anybody to be, think, or feel any which way. I can just encourage, I can walk my walk. And when people approach me to ask for information, I can share it.
So just a little more about you personally. Have you always been so connected to your people's way of living, or was there like a pivotal moment that had you like remember and reconnect?
I will say off and on, yes. I grew up in my community. I grew up in the Native community. I was very blessed to be around a lot of beautiful medicine people who helped me to understand things in a different perspective. When I was 8 years old, when I was 7, I was taught how to be in ceremony with self. That can also translate to meditation for others who need an idea of what that could look like. But by being in ceremony with self, I spent a year of this, practice of daily ceremony with self. And when I was 8 is when I finally got that connection. So it took me an entire year to finally get that connection where I understood things from a deeper level. for myself, that what I was supposed to do for a living,
Oh,
how I was supposed to, pour out into the world. And so at the age of 8, I knew that I was supposed to be a massage therapist
wow.
and an entertainer, as it was said to me. And so immediately I was able to open my eyes from that ceremony and put my hands on people and help them to release their tension and, help them in that way. I was able to put pen to paper and write poetry and song. And, the book that I wrote all came from that knowing of just sitting with myself and listening. So it's almost like prayer is where we ask and we ask and we ask. And then ceremony and self is where we listen and receive. And so I've had that connection from a very young age, but I will be open and admit that as imperfect as I am, because of the traumas of society that were, unfortunately bestowed upon me, I also found myself going away from my community, still having my beliefs, still having my understandings, and still having my spiritual experiences. I also had to dabble in other things that took me down the wrong path at some points. But because I had ceremony with self and the know-how,
Mm.
as many times as I went in the wrong direction, I was always able to pull myself back. And so it wouldn't be until I was about 22 where I finally stayed on track moving forward. But everybody is going to slip up at some point in time, or nobody is going to be 100%, their best selves all the time. But
Yeah.
the importance in my understanding from my experiences is, but you can always get back on track.
This is, to me, the path of right relationship. And maybe the word right um, makes it feel, and you said this at the beginning, like it's a destination and you get there and you arrive. And right can be associated with perfect. But in
Mm.
your story, and what I want people to hear is that it's not about arriving somewhere. It's about that recovery process that you spoke of. And we can have many moments where we fall out of right relationship with ourselves or with our community or with the ecosystem. But it's like that courage, and I think that desire to restore and to
Mhm.
come back to self and to the community and to others, and really find that inner alignment.
Yeah, maybe you can call that balanced relationship or healthy relationship, right? Because
Yeah.
there is no perfect and there is no right. It's just about alignment and doing what is good.
So traditional practices like being taught as a 7-year-old how to have a ceremony with oneself. This to me seems, again, part of the re-remembering that needs to happen. Like, who guided you in that? Who supported you in getting that incredible teaching?
I was blessed with a beautiful older brother who had always been connected as well. And he very much played a mother role in my life.
Mm,
He taught me how to read. He taught me how to write.
wow.
He taught me how to sing, how to harmonize.
Oh,
Um, and by him teaching me how to be in ceremony with myself, he was 5 years older than me. So he had been, around a lot longer than I. But by him teaching me how to be in ceremony with myself, he then taught me how to be a massage therapist and an energy worker and all of these things that came from being in ceremony with myself.
so the importance, I think, of having guides and um, relatives or elders just to support us along the way. I mean,
Yeah.
that's your speak.
Sorry.
No, go.
I do want to also acknowledge, even though he was the one that he spent daily practice with me on showing me that, I was very blessed to have people in my life like Phyllis Big Left Hand,
Mm.
who has now moved into the spirit world, and Sammy Little Owl, who also has moved into the spirit world. his brother Orville Little Owl, and others that have come into my life like that, who have given me beautiful lessons. George Ironshield, the list goes on. I have been very blessed to be around a lot of beautiful traditional spiritual leaders.
Wow. Yes to that. And you're carrying on the tradition and you're doing the work in this generation.
I'm just showing up I'm trying to show up to be my best self and be here for those of you who asked me to be here for you.
Mm. Can you tell us what the I don't know the proper language, the markings on your face represent?
In the Chumash language, we call it moch. And moch can translate into designs. And traditionally, people did have designs on their faces in different ways, different areas, as well as their bodies. And for us on the chin, it's a big thing to get into, but it was something that was traditionally done at womanhood ceremony. So when you first entered womanhood, you'd have a ceremony and moch would be given to you. And each moch has a significant meaning. So there wouldn't necessarily be just one for every single person. It might signify that you are the daughter of the leader of a particular village. It might signify that you work in a particular medicine.
Wow.
You might add on to it that would help to signify who you were married or that you lost your spouse. There's so many different things that we knew it would have meaning just by looking at it.
Mm.
And so, I mean, it's just a vast conversation to get into, but more or less, that's the quick on the moch.
What's the connection to that and right relationship?
Okay, when I think about womanhood ceremony, without crying, let me try to portray this.
Your tears are welcome, my friend. They're welcome.
So when you have your womanhood ceremony and you're given your moch, what you have in that moment is community. And so you go through different experiences, but I can't speak for every family, but for certain womanhood ceremonies that I'm aware of, you're pampered as a woman. You are shown in this ceremony that you are to be loved, that you are to be respected, that you are to be honored, and your community shows up for you to show you this.
Wow.
And I just feel that by us not having that ceremony, all of us, by all of us young women not being shown this from the beginning, because how many of us maybe felt shame in starting our moon cycles and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we had our relatives there to embrace us and tell us how beautiful this is and how powerful we are and that we're life givers and just everything that comes with this, that's the start to understanding the power of relationship and community and self. I mean, it just takes you full circle. And then you grow up to be this woman who then does that for the next generations. And then it becomes this cycle of just love.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
That's it right there. I have full body shivers, like right there. That's like that's right relationship. And that is honoring the feminine. And we know that she's been really like wounded and Mother Earth has been communicating to us, hello, hello, hello. Like, can we go back to traditions and moments like that where we really honor the sacredness?
Yeah. And in some of those womanhood ceremonies, young women would actually get put into the womb of the earth. So they would actually put you into the earth and you would sit on warm coals and plants, herbs. So you are full circle in relationship with the earth right there, So yeah, it's beautiful, it's powerful, and it's very devastating that it had to be taken away from us because the people who came here with so much hate and disconnectedness, their mindset was very much of like, when they understood this flower ceremony, this womanhood ceremony, to them it was like, oh, she's a woman now. And the unconceivable thoughts that came from that is
Mhm.
one of the reasons why we had to put this to sleep for a little while.
Mm.
And then now in today's society, a lot of women are embracing womanhood ceremony, but it becomes a little more difficult now because now we also have, the modern day pace that we have to keep up with in this, modern Western mindset.
Mhm. Another reason why some of the traditions got lost because of that consumption. Like
Yeah.
and I just, yeah, my heart
Ano-
just breaks.
another reason to slow down.
Another reason to slow down. Yeah. Oh, Jessa, you have so much brilliance and so much wisdom and creativity, and the way that you express yourself and your purpose is so uniquely you. The listeners have heard that you're an MC and a rapper and an author. And what else in this context feels important for you to share that you'd like to put voice to right now?
About me personally?
And anything that just is like kind of coming through that you want to like make sure is part of the stew we've co-created today.
I just want to make sure that we understand. And I know I said it earlier, but truly that we understand what sacred is and that we are sacred. I know a lot of us walk around with shame, with guilt, with a lot of these emotions and feelings that truly are not ours to keep simply because we've experienced life, you know? And I want those of you listening to understand that you're here to experience life. I'll point the finger at me to help give an idea of what that might look like is at some point in my youth, in sitting in ceremony with self, um, I was able to see the life up to that point. At this moment, I was 18 and I had seen the life before me, right? So from the ages of 4 to 18, and I was shown why I went through every experience. And what dawned on me, and I will share that there was a lot of heavy traumatic experiences that I experienced, which caused me to want to destroy my own body and to destroy myself and not to respect myself. And what came to me then was the understanding, the deep, deep knowing that I came here to experience these things. And I will also say that we all have a different path, but ultimately we come here to experience these things, whatever it may be, good and bad, to help us to grow. And so the ultimate goal that I understood from this experience, the ultimate goal is to continue to find alignment, no matter what's happening, good or bad, to stay in alignment with self and to allow these experiences to help me to grow spiritually.
Mhm.
And so the end goal, because it is so easy to pick up on somebody else's negative energy or to let somebody else ruin our days or another experience to make us, woe's me. But ultimately, when we stay in alignment with ourselves, we begin to understand the reasons why, whatever that might be. And so it helps us to start to begin to see broader pictures and taking us back to that we are all related. And unfortunately, I think what a lot of us don't want to believe, and sometimes it's hard to understand this, and I understand that, is that when we are choosing in a spiritual element to experience some of these harsh realities, we're actually agreeing sometimes with each other. If you've ever noticed where you may have said something that was hurtful or done something that was hurtful, and you sat there and said, why did I do that? That's out of my character. There was an agreement between you and that person
Yeah.
that this was going to happen to help each other in growth. And so sometimes it's hard to understand why somebody would be so harmful and detrimental to us.
I've got two last things. First is where can people find you and access your work? Of course, we'll have all of this in the show notes, but what can you share with us through your voice?
Yeah, you can find me on www.jessacalderon.com, as well as Jessa Calderon on anywhere where you listen to music, including YouTube. But be it Spotify, Apple Music, Shazam is another one. And so I actually do have, if listening to this podcast and hearing what I had to say today resonated, then I will share that I actually have sounds, I call them, that help you. One of them is 14 minutes, the other one's 36 minutes, but help you to get in that alignment. One of them is specifically for like cellular healing and healing the systems within the body and helping those systems to remember how to be healthy. And then on those same sites, I also have just different types of music that I love to create. And on the website, you can also find my book and the links to get the book, Sisterhood, that I wrote. And then I also have Instagram, TikTok, and those things, but I am not sure at this moment how active I will be. But those are under Jessa_songwriter1.
Amazing. And again, we'll put all of this in the show notes, but please connect with Jessa and her brilliant work. And I would love if you'd be willing, if we could close this conversation with a prayer. You and I started with one, and it's so palpable, the transmission that you emit. So if we could close in that way, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. I do also want to say another way to reach me is through Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples. As the organization that I work for, they do amazing work. So if anybody's interested in looking at that, you can hit up sacredplaces.org. And let's get into it. If those of you listening would like to participate in this, I ask you that you close your eyes. You can either put your left hand over your heart and your right hand just underneath your belly button, or you can just put your hands down to the side of your body. It's up to you. But in this moment, I ask that we take a deep breath in through the nose, allowing positive, loving, healing energy to penetrate the being, and pulling all of the tension of the bodies out as we exhale out through the mouth. And again, breathing in through the nose, this positive, loving, healing energy, and allowing this loving, healing energy to penetrate the neck and the shoulders, calming the neck and shoulders, taking all of this tension and go ahead and release it out through the mouth, feeling our shoulders drop and release. And as you listen to my voice, continue to breathe in through the nose and either out through the mouth or out through the nose, carrying the intention that every breath in is breathing in unconditional love, and every breath out is letting go of unconditional love. And in this way, we are reciprocal with the energy that surrounds us. And in this moment, we can tune into our heart and place our attention to the heart and just visualize a beautiful emerald green color shining from the front of our body and out to the back. And as this beautiful light channels through us, it begins to remove any and all blockages, removing any shame, guilt, any feelings that cause us to stand in our own way are removed and transmuted into the most unconditional, loving, beautiful energies. And in this way, we allow ourselves to feel calm, relaxed, and light. And I invite you to take another deep breath as we allow ourselves to raise our vibrations to the highest frequency of love, finding ourselves in a calm, loving state, recognizing who we are and who we are meant to be, and allowing ourselves to be in full and complete alignment with ourselves. In this moment, we know who we are. In this moment, we understand our reason for being. In this moment, we recognize the sacred within us. In this moment, we understand that we are loved unconditional. Again, taking in this deep breath and allowing all of these words to seep in and become true for self. I am beautiful. I am sacred. I am ancient. I am deserving of everything beautiful and loved. I am love. I am love. I am love. And I share my love with you. I invite you to take one big, deep breath and release that breath as you allow yourself to be here in the present moment, allowing ourselves to always be in the present moment of here and now, to allow us to experience the beauty of all that is in every moment of each day. Go ahead and wiggle your fingers and your toes and open your eyes and just be fully present in all that is you.
Woo! Wow. I feel that. What a transmission. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for saying yes to coming to talk to us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for reaching out and for sharing your very sacred and valuable time and space with me and everybody else who has tuned into this session.
Appreciate you.
Likewise.